All right, let's talk about something that has just happened. Something I don't think anyone really saw coming. And if I'm being totally honest, it might be one of the boldest moves we've seen in a long time when it comes to gun rights in this country. No matter where you stand politically, this one is going to make people talk. And I mean really talk, because what just came out of the Department of Justice is shaking things up. Just a couple of weeks ago, right in the middle of July, the DOJ under the current administration dropped a proposed rule that could give a second chance to thousands of Americans, people who've served time for nonviolent crimes, people who've paid their dues and yet still walk around carrying the label of a felon. And for years, that label has meant no guns, no exceptions. Until now. Now, let me be clear. This isn't about letting dangerous people back into society with weapons. That's not what anyone's talking about here. We're talking about the guy who wrote a bad check 20 years ago, or the woman who got caught up in something stupid when she was 19. We're talking about people who have lived clean lives since then, raised families, paid taxes, tried to do better, and yet have been completely shut out of a constitutional right. That's what's on the table here. And I've got to say, it's long overdue. I don't think people fully grasp how big of a deal this is, or how rare it is to see any administration, even one that claims to support the Second Amendment, actually go to bat for those who've made mistakes but tried to make it right. Usually, once you're labeled a felon, that's it. No guns, no chance. Doesn't matter if it was nonviolent, doesn't matter if it happened decades ago, doesn't matter if you've been a model citizen ever since. That one stamp on your record is enough to strip away your rights forever. And listen, I get it. We don't want to hand weapons to people who pose a threat to society. But when we're lumping someone who cheated on their taxes or forgot to file properly with violent repeat offenders, that's not justice. That's blanket punishment. That's ignoring everything about who that person has become since they made that mistake. People talk a lot about rehabilitation in this country, but we don't really act like we believe in it. We say, okay, you've served your time. Now go back out there and make a life for yourself. But we leave every possible chain around their neck. No decent jobs, no loans, no housing, and in many cases, no right to defend themselves or their family. It's like the punishment never ends. And eventually, that leads to people giving up. Because why even try? So this proposed change, this idea that we might actually give people a path to restore their rights, this is big. And honestly, I'm surprised it's even being considered. Because every time the conversation turns toward gun laws in this country, it always becomes a fight, a political war zone. And here we are, in the summer of 2025, and the idea that someone might be able to say, hey, I made a mistake, but I've done the work, I've lived right, and I want my rights back. That's the kind of thing we should be encouraging. And I know there are going to be people who push back against this. There always are. People who say, well, if you break the law, that's it. You lose your rights. You made your choice. And to a point, I get where they're coming from. Actions have consequences. But here's what I think a lot of those people are missing. Sometimes the punishment doesn't match the mistake. Sometimes it stretches way too far and way too long. And sometimes it turns a dumb decision into a life sentence. Not in prison, but in opportunity, in freedom, and in dignity. You ever stop to think about what it actually means to live with a felony record? You can't vote in some places. You can't live where you want. You can't work where you want. You can't own a firearm, even if your crime had nothing to do with violence. Even if it was something like lying on a form when you were barely old enough to rent a car. Maybe it was a financial mistake. Maybe it was something you didn't even fully understand at the time. But it sticks. It follows you around for the rest of your life. I knew someone years ago, one of the most disciplined, hardest-working people I'd ever met. Made good money, supported his family, stayed out of trouble, ran a business from scratch, the kind of person who people looked up to. But he had one thing hanging over him from decades ago, a drug charge when he was barely out of his teens. Nothing violent, nothing beyond possession, and because of that, he still, to this day, cannot legally own a firearm. 30 years of living right, and it didn't matter. That's the problem. There's no path. Or at least, there hasn't been until now. This new proposal, this rule that the DOJ just rolled out, it gives people a way back. Not an automatic reset, not a blanket forgiveness, but a structured process. a chance. And I can't emphasize enough how important that is, because second chances matter. This country was built on the idea of redemption, of starting over, of making mistakes and getting back up. But somewhere along the way, we've decided that some people don't deserve that anymore. We put them in a box and leave them there. And it's not just the individual who suffers. Their families do too, their kids, their communities, and it doesn't help anyone. It just keeps people down. Now, I know what you might be thinking. What about the truly dangerous ones? What about the people who should never have access to a weapon again? And yeah, of course, some people can't be restored. That's real. That's necessary. There's no question that there are individuals who've proven, time and again, that they can't be trusted with that kind of responsibility. But this rule doesn't change that. In fact, it spells it out pretty clearly. If you've committed a violent felony, a sex offense, or something that shows you're a danger to society, you're not getting your rights back. Simple as that. What this is really about is fairness. About giving people who've done their time and walked the line a path to reclaim something that should never have been taken forever in the first place. We act like owning a gun is a luxury. But it's not. It's a right. And rights don't vanish just because someone made a mistake in their past, especially if they've done everything since then to be better. Think about how many people we're talking about here. This isn't a handful. This is tens of thousands of Americans who made one wrong turn and have been stuck ever since. Some of them can't even work in certain jobs because of that record. They get judged before they ever walk in the door. You think they're going to feel like part of society when every door stays shut? You think they're going to want to play by the rules when the system never lets them back in? And it's not just about the right to own a gun. It's about what that right represents. It's about being treated like a full citizen again, being trusted, being seen as someone who belongs here. When you restore someone's rights, you're saying, we see the work you've done. We see who you are now, not just who you were then. And that kind of recognition can change a person's life. The thing that really frustrates me is how selective we are about this stuff. We talk a big game about giving people second chances, but only when it's convenient. We'll celebrate someone for turning their life around, put them on a magazine cover, tell their story like it's inspirational. But behind the scenes, we still keep them locked out. We still say, you can have a life, but only the life we say you're allowed to have. You can work, but not here. You can live, but not there. You can speak your mind, but don't expect to be heard. And don't you dare try to protect yourself or your family, because that's a right you don't get anymore. What's the point of second chances if we don't actually give them? And let's be honest, this is not a partisan issue. At least, it shouldn't be. This is about basic fairness. If you believe in justice, in accountability, in the idea that people can grow and change, then you should support something like this. You don't have to agree with every policy that comes out of this administration to admit that this one makes sense. You don't have to like the people in power to see when they get something right. And in this case, they really might have. Of course, the media is going to spin it. Some people are already out there saying this is reckless or irresponsible. They're painting it like the floodgates are opening and everyone's going to be armed overnight. But that's not how it works. This rule isn't a free pass. It's not a loophole. It's a process, a formal one. It has to go through layers of review, has to meet specific standards, and can still be denied if there's any reason to believe that restoring rights would be a danger to anyone. It's not about making things less safe. It's about making things more fair. And think about this too. We're always saying we want people to be better, to take responsibility, to work hard and build something. But when they do, we rarely meet them halfway. We keep reminding them of who they were instead of who they've become. That's not justice. That's punishment without end. I remember growing up and hearing all the time that America is the land of opportunity, that you can come back from anything here if you work hard enough. But that's only true if the system lets you come back. If it slams the door forever, what are we even telling people? That there's no point? That one mistake defines your whole life? I don't buy that. I never have. So when I see something like this, something that could actually change lives, that could give people dignity back, that could start to fix a system that's been broken for a long time, yeah, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to give credit where it's due. Because this matters. This is about real people. Your neighbors, your coworkers, maybe even someone in your own family. Not everyone gets it. Not everyone wants to get it. But that's okay. If we start having the conversation, if we start challenging the idea that rights are permanent for some and permanently gone for others, then maybe we start moving in the right direction. I don't know what's going to happen with this rule. It's still in the early stages. There's going to be debate. There's going to be opposition. But I'm hoping, really hoping, that this time we don't let fear or politics shut it down, because people deserve a way back. They deserve a shot at redemption. And this, right here, might be one of the best chances they've had in decades. That's where I'm at. That's what I think. You're welcome to feel differently. But at the end of the day, I'd rather live in a country that believes in second chances than one that pretends to.